Vera, tell us why it was important for you after you retired from 30 years of teaching to continue to teach but in a different way.
Well, I thought after I retired I would do some tutoring. And I started to tutor children when I suddenly realized that it was the parents that needed the tutoring, not the children. Because they were the ones that had to practice with them. No matter what I did once a week, they had to provide the practice, and they didn't know how to do that. And the only thing I found after all these years that parents say is sound it out. And that doesn't work a lot of the time, and it causes big problems for children. So I started teaching them, and it was so successful that they said, "Oh, Vera, you have to write this down because this has been so helpful to us." So I wrote, in 1995, I wrote my book, Reading is More Than Phonics, which now I've retitled to say Simply Read. But it has sold over 20,000 copies, and it's a real little primer on reading. And so I've gone on from there, and I've been doing consults in my home for quite a few years where parents bring their kids, and I teach the parents what to do. Then I read with the child for a few minutes, and it's quite magic because quite often the child, by the time I finish 10 or 15 minutes of demonstration, they've got it. And just in the last couple of months, I think I realized what it is that I do that's so magical. You know, when you look at a hologram and you can see the flat picture, and then all of a sudden see it in 3D, there's a switch in your brain that happens. And I know that's what happens when I'm working with reading now, that the child or the adult or whoever is reading sees in their mind, they see reading one way, they see it sounding out words, figuring out words, and then all of a sudden they make the shift to the fact that reading is not sounding out words, it's making sense, and it's just magical what happens.
So let's break this down a little bit. What would you say, firstly, are some of the common mistakes that parents make when it comes to teaching their children how to read?
Well, one of the things is they start working on it too soon. And that's partly because of school, because now they're teaching children to read in kindergarten, which for me is ridiculous because most children are not really ready. They can't even hear the short vowel sounds properly. Now, some kids read at 4 and some kids read in kindergarten, and that's fine. And I say, whoopee for them. But it should not be made an expectation for all children because some of them, it's just like if we wanted them all to walk at 12 months. Well, and then we started putting splints on their legs so they could walk properly and blah, blah. It's the same with this. We have to give them time to mature and time for everything to develop. And I backpacked around Finland, and they don't start any formal teaching of reading until the children are 7. And they, of course, brag very good reading standards. And that's one of the big ones because they've got time to mature into it. And I know many children in Finland are reading before they're 7, but there's no expectation and no grading and no putting them into programs and things like that.
How about what are some of the negative effects, or are there, of forcing your children or getting them to read before they're ready?
Well, you know, they experience failure, and some kids see themselves as failures as soon as they get into school because they're not up to their peers. And kids 4 and 5 years old have no idea what to do to be successful. They just don't know. And so they're failed and told that they don't read well, and their parents are called in, and the poor little souls don't even know who they are yet. And so they develop a negative concept toward reading and often toward school too. And especially little boys, because little boys just aren't as ready. We know they're almost a year behind in their development, yet they're all treated the same. And I see so many little boys come here that are so sad and crying, and some of them don't even want to talk to me at all. They just don't want to think about reading anymore. Well, if you don't love something, you're not going to do the work that it takes to be good at it. Anything that we do, we have to practice, but we practice because we like it, not because we have to.
Very true. What about some of the other common mistakes that parents make?
Well, you know, there's another one, and this isn't the parents' fault. This whole business of saying you have to read 20 minutes a day with your child and oftentimes have to sign a paper and everything, I think that has caused more problems around reading than almost anything else, for the very simple reason that parents are not taught at all how to practice properly. And so every day for 20 minutes, there's failure between the parent and the child, and the relationship becomes sour. And I know parents say to me, they say, get over here so we can get this 20 minutes in. And so the whole thing starts to break down. And I taught grade 1 in a really high needs school, and I never asked my parents to teach them anything. I didn't want them to. I wanted them to read to them and the children to take home books when they could read, but I didn't want them trying to teach them anything because they didn't know. And so it becomes even harder for the child to learn. And they get discouraged and the whole relationship falls down. And I see it all the time when the kids have come here.
I mean, it must be such a hard sell though, Vera, right? Like, we live in a world where there's information absolutely everywhere all the time. And, you know, from a young age, we expect children to do incredible things. So while we know that comparing our kids one to the other within a family or one family to another is not the right thing to do, we all do it. So when it comes to reading, how do you get a parent to shift their thinking about, you know, teaching their child how to read at the appropriate time?
It's very, very difficult. And that's why I'm having trouble with my work. I put my book online as a course now for parents, and it's quite hard to get them to believe that if they take this course, they can turn their child around, because it seems like it's magic mushrooms or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's difficult. But every time I get a chance to talk to them, they say, oh, that's so much common sense. But parents, a lot of parents want bragging rights. You know, they want, oh, my child's doing this or that. And I just tell parents to slack off.
What are some tips? I know, I mean, we don't want you to give away too much of what's in your book or in your course, but what are some quick tips that you can offer parents, like you say, to help them, to equip them, to educate them about how to help their children with reading?
I'm not worried about giving away anything that's in my book or my course, because that's really a fascinating study in itself. But let me see. I think one of the things is to be an advocate for your child. And if they're in, as I had people come just last week, and their grade 6 child, the school wants them to get psych testing done on this little girl. And it's going to cost them $5,000 for psych testing. And what will they know then? That she doesn't read, and they'll probably label something. And she'll have had a really bad experience doing something she could do. I've had to say, go to the school and just tell them, when your child's in grade 1, and if they're coming home unhappy with school, you better do something about it. That's the canary in the coal mine. And I said to them, you know what to do? Go to the school and say to the teacher, look, I know that my child is a little behind the others, but I don't care right now. All I want is at the end of the day, when he comes home, he's happy. I want happiness to be your goal. And I don't care about report cards. I don't care about anything else. I want to give him some time, and I just want happiness.
You know, it's so simple, yet, you know, we're all, I guess we live in a very competitive world, right?
We do, and we have to advocate for our children, because they're not all ready to be at the same place at the same time and take the same test, and they're not. And you have to just somehow negotiate for your child so that they keep wanting and loving school and loving learning, and that spark doesn't go out, because when it does, it's very hard to rekindle it.